Daniel. Tracy. Gotta come out.
Okay. At this time, I entertain a motion to come out of closed session.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. I'll start the voting with Mr. Philip McCraw,
Yes.
Mr. Robbie McCraw,
Yes.
Mr. Rex Hill.
Yes.
And I vote yes. All right, at this time, I'll ask to motion to certify that the Carroll County Board of Supervisors conveyed a closed session this date pursuant to affirmative recorded vote, and on the motion to close the meeting in accordance with the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, whereas Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the Board of Supervisors that such closed session was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Carroll County Board of Supervisors hereby certifies that the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempt from open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act were heard, discussed, and considered in the closed session to which this certification applies, and only such business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed session was conveyed were heard, discussed, or considered by the meeting to which this certification applies. I'll start the certification with Mr. Philip McCraw,
I certify.
Mr. Rex Hill,
I so certify.
Mr. Robbie McCraw,
I so certify.
and I so certify. At this time, I'll ask Mr. McCraw if he would, Robbie McCraw, sorry, Philip, lead us in our pledge and invocation.
It's all rise. Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight, thanking you for this wonderful day that you've provided for us, and thanking you for this opportunity to gather together. Lord, we just ask that you watch over us and protect us and guide us through our meeting. Lord, we ask that you be with those that are sick and shut in, and those that are just struggling with life in general, Lord. And we ask special prayer upon Michelle, and she's dealing with an illness, and ask that you bless that family. Lord, we ask that you be with Rex and his family as they're still dealing with the death of his dad. And Lord, just a special remembrance of all the fathers that have gone on, and what a struggle it is for those families to deal with it on this Father's Day that's coming up. Lord, we ask that you lead, guide, and direct us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The This time I want to amend the agenda to add the MOU for the fire apparatus to the agenda and to correct on the consent calendar, to add the corrections for the budget appropriations for departmental budget overages in the amount of $41,500. So with that done, at this time, we'll move on to the agenda to citizens' time. Can you run the clock? Okay, looks like we've got a lot of people going to speak at citizens' time. I will remind everybody that there is a 3-minute time. And to start with, we'll start with Sherry Martin. Ms. Martin.
I'm never on time, of all time, I am in first. I'm representing for the road on 2739 Duncan Mill Road in Duxford. I just want to come back and let you know I sure haven't changed my mind, but if you can, just we sure would like to have it paid. I was noticing there was on the back of the sheet, there is a signature road plan. And, so I hope that maybe it can be done for them, it's kind of like you go ahead and look for that pretty golden road that there, I want to see a huge paved one here before I go. So, I sure would appreciate it, y'all could get to it, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Next would be Linda, and I apologize, 43 Senior Road. Yes, ma'am. How are you today?
Okay,
Good.
I come because I am totally against having the light center move up the across the road from me. I live on Senior Road at Third House, and I do not approve of that. It will cause our property to go down, and it will cause us to be afraid in our own houses. Because then people get out and they cause trouble, and the drugs up there, I just don't want to live there if that comes there. And I think the citizens of Carroll County feel the same way. Because in a community like we've got, it's mostly senior citizens, and we do not need a place like that around us that close. And we would appreciate if you all would take time to consider that. And we'd be afraid to let our grandchildren out if they come to visit us, because you never know. Even when the training center was there, we've had them come in our house. Just open the door and come in. But if they wasn't harmful, we could just take them back. But you can't do that to somebody on drugs. And like those people are. And it takes up the police time to take care of them people, and we don't have enough officers anyway. Because people are trying to get rid of the cops now, and we need more officers. And we'll need more if something like that comes into Carroll County. Close to our houses. And I appreciate if y'all take that into consideration in a neighborhood like that. We need something up there that senior citizens apartments, something like that. It'd be a lot better than what they're because that's not something that they want in a neighborhood like ours. So all the people up there to be afraid, even stay in their own house. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be Sally Marshall.
Well, I live right in front of the training center at the lower end, where the kids always play ball. It was fun to watch them out there. I've lived there 32 and a half years, felt safe, pretty secure. But I'm not gonna feel safe if it changes to the life center from daylight. It just feels like it's gonna ruin our whole neighborhood. Because you don't know what's gonna go on if they get out, and I've heard how they get out and steal things, break into homes and steal things and stuff. But I'm by myself now. I lost my husband recently. And if it moves in, then I can't sell my house at a decent price to go buy another house to get out of those things. Y'all please consider it, do what you can to help us out, and I agree with everything Linda said. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be Teresa Cornett.
I grew up in Carroll County. Our neighborhood was there before the training center, and I remember all the problems that we had when it first came. Residents were allowed to go to the two stores. There was one that was a short walk, there was one that was on the highway. And I had seen residents have seizures in the neighbor's yard down in front of our house. That was a concern before they got security and started having security guards and things like that and watching them there. I have 2 grandchildren. My husband works night shift every other month. I would like to feel safe in my home without having to go to bed with a loaded gun beside me. My son-in-law and his brother own Going to the Dog Pet Resort, which is across the street. They also have a gun business. What's going to stop the life center people getting out, going in their business, breaking out, stealing guns, ammo, and shooting up an entire neighborhood? And there's still a lot of families with small children that live in our neighborhood. And we would all like to feel safe. You know we need jobs in this area. I'm not against jobs. I'm not against the drug rehabilitation. I just don't want it in my back door. And I hope you all will consider it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is John Nobley.
Hello, is that thing working?
It is? Yes, sir.
You might adjust it a little bit.
Yeah, turn him up a little bit. Distinguished member of the Carroll County Board. Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is John Nobley. I live on Carroll Drive. Neighbors came together. We build community together. We talk together. We play together. We protect each other. And we watch out for each other. As you see to this evening, you see people from Carroll Drive, Training Center Road, Senior Road, what did I miss here?
Airport Road.
Carroll Drive, yeah. We are all together here for the common cause, to have our voice heard and have our elected official listen to our concern about our new neighbor who has not been communicating and listening to our concern. It appears that Acadia Healthcare is going to be our new neighbor. As they will be taking over the old training center property in the near future, there is a lot of unanswered question about what the facility will look like, and how they could possibly change the community that we have built through the year. These unanswered questions give rise anxiety and fear. A question like, will they build a fence? Will they provide enough security? And I have some more, but I got to get it. Unanswered questions lead to fear. Fear of not knowing who our neighbor is going to be. Fear of not knowing how our community is going to change. Fear of not being able to protect our family and property and community from unknown change. We are here tonight, just as we have been at previous boards of supervisory meeting, asking for answer to our question, to ask to our elected representative to stand up for us. Your voter, we are your voters, guys, to help represent our need for answer and need to protect our community. We all believe that good fences, our good fences make for good neighbor, and we would like to understand that the future all for us. Our potential neighbor, Acadia Healthcare, is a $6 billion annual revenue and in excess of $2 billion a year. I'm talking about billion, not million, like they said on the Galaxy Gazette one time. And we asked our board of supervisor to draft an ordinance that we require Acadia to use some of their financial resources to fence that property and provide for appropriate security so that they do not burden our county share of office with their security needs. We appreciate your time this evening and urge you to listen to our request as we are a community, as a community we represent a large group of voters who want to be able to say that our elected board of supervisors stand up for our community and protect us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Travis Branch.
Good evening, to you.
Good evening.
I come to you as a citizen of the community as well, in reference to this. I come to the community as a citizen as well, in reference to this. I understand what's going on here, and I also come to you from law enforcement. There's been some paperwork facts to you here, come from the sheriff today, with numbers in reference to what's going on with the facility in Gala. I already realize that this facility is coming. There's nothing that this board can do to keep it from coming. But there is something that this board can do to protect the citizens of Carroll from it. Now that's what we have voted you in to do, and that's what we're here for, to ask you to help us with. From the 1st of May, or excuse me, from 1st of January to the 1st of May, there has been 98 calls for service at this facility in Gala. We're talking about a 16th of members in that facility currently that will be in the facility on training center. So can we say that those calls for service will be doubled, tripled? Do we have the manpower in our sheriff's office? I'm pretty sure our sheriff's office that we don't have the manpower. My side of law enforcement, we don't have the manpower. It's been my experience with the people that are coming in here, not from our own community, all over the state that I've had to deal with, that we just don't get anything good from it. There's a 20% accrual rate with this thing as far as helping people. I understand that once again we can't do anything with it, but you can help us. I live in this section and have small children in this section that are out playing, riding bicycles all the time. we had a fence away from the road, it would keep those things that are happening in daylights and those calls of service things. Someone could not pull up off the training center, hand something over a fence. It's too far of a reach. Without that fence, they can walk straight to the road, they can walk to the local businesses. Just like in daylights, you're probably familiar with, the old grocery store up behind. Anybody's ever been there, they had a store on it, so they had to shut the door. Or they had a sign on the door. The sign basically said anybody from the life center can in. Now, why would we put that sign on the door? Because they're robbing the store owners blind. These are the things that we're facing there, and I'd ask you to look into the security. It's been under my impression that they've said that there is going to be 2 security guards. This board here can make sure that doesn't happen. Put the right ordinance into law to stop that. Say we're gonna have enough people to man the 220 proposed first day guests and the possible 350 guests within a couple of months. So we're out here and we'll see you again next month.
Thank you, Trevor.
Thank you.
Next is Bill Bowers.
Hello.
Hello.
I was here last month speaking on the same issue of the Life Center taking over the training center facility. And we know it's going in. There's nothing we can do to stop it. The state owns the property and they can sell it to whomever they please. So knowing that the Life Center will be there, I follow exactly what John said and what Travis said. I've known John since I was this tall, little kid. And we're all a part of this community. And we're all worried. We're in fear, not only for ourselves, but for our families. Like my mother. I'm not always at the house. I can't always be there to protect her. What will stop an individual from being able to access the neighborhood? A fence. It doesn't have to be a 20-foot tall barbed wire fence. We need some type of secure area of fencing around the entire property with an entrance and exit at one point. Because if you've seen what's went on in Galax for years, some will say, oh, it's nothing. It's 1 or 2 cases of the year, whatever. And that's a lie. Everyone needs help. Like I said last time I was here, people that are on drugs, they need to come off it. They need to help. I understand that. And I'm not against them. God help them. They need every bit of help they can get. But the community needs to know that we can go to bed and not wake up dead. And that would be bad. And that's why I'm afraid it'll happen. Because I am a victim of violence in this area from my own stepfather back in 2003, protecting my mother from him. And it was on the property. Is this going to happen again with somebody that's strung out, trying to break in to steal whatever they can to sell to get the drugs they want or need? And I don't know what else to say. Travis and John both said everything that I'd want to say. I just want to reiterate and back into what they're saying. Please help us. Please do the ordinance that's needed to keep us safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Judy DeBolt.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I live on Crystal Lane, which is 2 roads over from the training center. And as everyone here has said, you know, we are afraid for our safety. We are afraid for our property, our value of our property that we've worked years and paid taxes, you know, to build up what we've got. And with a matter of one facility coming in, they're going to cut it at least in half. And, you know, that's not right. And to move a place like that in a residential district, which there's a residential district northeast, south, and west of this place. You know, there's no getting away from the community. And even the one in Independence, the one in Douglas, the New River Valley facility, they're all away from residential districts. You know, their danger is not like it's going to be at the training center. And I know you can't stop it. I know it's coming. But in Richmond, we have no voice in Richmond, but you do. You, as our elected officials, do have a voice. And will you please try to protect us from the inevitable? And you're the only ones that can help us. So I'm begging of you, please do something to help us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Elizabeth Surratt.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah.
I didn't plan to come here to talk, but since I signed it up, I shall do a little. We have a hard time hearing what's back there. This is not moving back to this crowd. I live on Oakland Heights Circle, which is right above the training center. If they come across the little fence behind the houses that are there, they will be in my backyard. And I turned 90 last week. My husband is 91. There are 5 ladies who live alone in that circle. There's only 9 of us in the circle that comes off the airport road. But we feel that this is very dangerous for us. And I know that it's gone through, and probably you can't do anything about that. But please, please pass the ordinances that will keep us safe from what's coming in there. Because we have no other choice. We've lived there 52 years and never had a problem at all. We love our neighborhood. We love our neighbors. Everybody gets along fine. We are one big family all around there, and we want to keep it that way. Please help us with the ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Sue Edwards. Good evening.
Dave.
Well, I just want to say that what everybody else has said is very, very important. I live on the airport road. I've lived there 65 years. And I don't want to leave at this time and point, but I want to feel safe. I want my neighbors safe, the elderly and the children that we have in the neighborhood. I want to see they're safe. We've let a lot of opportunities pass from us with this property to come down to this. So now, thankfully, you all can help us. And we're looking for you to do that very thing for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Debbie Melton. Pass. Tim Branscombe.
Hello. I agree with everything said, except for the we need a fence for sure. But the guards too, for 220 people, that's low. That's real low. Virginia Department of Corrections is a whole lot higher than that, and I'm sure it's not 2 for 100. So if it could make the company to at least put that guards to match what DOC would put in the control of their residents, I think that would be awesome. But we definitely need the fence. so that people couldn't just walk across wherever they want to, from property to property. And as far as the officers, we need them, instead of having to purchase more officers for our own, when they do cause trouble, and that they will. I've been in corrections, had been for 15 years. These ain't good people. Most of them, they just take this program to get a lighter sentence, to get out of the prison thing, because the judge offers it. Most of them go back. Most of them just ride their time. And 220 of them, if they was to come out and ride, I mean, there's not 220 people right here. That's bad odds for a community. For all 220, it'd wipe out a community. But they need something. Please, something. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Susan Archer.
I am a relatively new resident in the area, and I did my internship and my undergraduate degree at the center in Columbus, Ohio, like the training center. I am concerned for my safety. I live alone, and I have upgraded my home to age in place. If we create a prison-like environment in that neighborhood, the property values are going to go down, and we're going to end up ultimately with a poverty-stricken ghetto. And I don't think the county really wants that. I would feel safer with a fence, but I would also feel like I was in prison if it's going up the way it's been suggested. A fence farther back from the road that doesn't make it look like all those acres are a prison farm might take care of it, or locked units. But I don't know that you gentlemen and the government of the county can do anything about those kinds of things. But if we treat them like criminals, one day they will behave like criminals. You get a self-fulfilling prophecy with dogs, kids, and some old ladies. I'm concerned about the total neighborhood and the way we go about taking care of everybody. Folks that are in drug rehab need to be taken care of and need to be helped off their addictions, but I don't think it should fall on the neighbors to pay the price.
Thank you.
Next is Jill Greathouse. Okay. Jack?
I'm not prepared either, but I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Yes, sir.
Lots of good points have been made, and I'm not going to repeat all of those points. At what price are we willing to sacrifice our communities? We as a community, the county, have to bond together. That's what we have you for, to help us with issues like this. So from the perspective of addressing the issues that Travis and John and others have mentioned already, we need help to address this, because there will be issues with this location. It will affect the lives and health of the folks that live around there. So we need your help in addressing those issues, from the security, from the fencing, all those items that have been mentioned. We need those addressed, and we need the ordinance to help us do that. So we're depending on you to help us get through this issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Shelby Bond. It says Shelby and Brad.
My wife's on call, so she had to take a call. I've been there for 50 years, born and raised there. When the training center was there, they would come through. They never bothered nothing. You know, you just give a little phone call. They come down calmly and get them. I work for a trucking company. I go into the rehab center in Greathouse. It ain't a place to be. It ain't. I've never had no trouble, but you can see what goes on. And it's kind of sad. Lived there all my life, and here she comes. But these people are all right. They need a little security. Help them out, you know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is David Cornett.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I just want to emphasize on what everybody else has said, especially John. Everybody used to go to the Carroll skating rink when he run it. Everybody knows that. My wife Teresa was up here earlier. She talked about how I work night shift sometime and she don't want to go to bed with a gun under her pillow. We just want security. That's all we want. That's just like Danny lives right behind us. He's got grandkids. We've got grandkids. I mean, what security will we have? We're looking for y'all to help us out. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's Danny Martin.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
I just wanted to speak with a little bit of experience. I used to work in Galax about 16 years ago. Come out one day, anybody see my car? Convertible black GT Mustang with the top down. Lady broke out of the Life Center. They called her the other side of Blacksburg, headed up 81. Wasn't too hard to, find a GT convertible Mustang, but, of course, at the time she pawned off some stuff I had in there, bought her some beer, got her some cigarettes, pried open the gas cap with a screwdriver, because she didn't know there's a button in the glove box to put gas in it. And, of course, whose insurance had to cover the loss? Mine. Am I going to be susceptible to that now? Safety, security, they're coming. We just need to make good choices on making sure we're taken care of. The Life Center is definitely necessary, and they need to be held accountable for what they do. I have a son and a daughter-in-law who are on meth right now. They went to the Life Center last year, and the Life Center told them, in Galax, told them that they didn't need to be there. They didn't have a problem. I have 4 grandchildren with me now that belong to these 2. The littlest one is 4 weeks old. The drugs is a problem, and the safety and security of the community is going to be a problem. I mean, it's serious either way. So let's make good choices. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Carolyn Hunnicutt. Hello.
Y'all don't know me. I live next door to Elizabeth Surratt, and everything she said is exactly right. We know each other. We're close communities, and we're a larger community. I grew up on Carroll Drive. I live on Oakland Heights. And it's a nice, peaceful neighborhood. I can walk out of my house at midnight and go in my backyard if I choose to and feel perfectly safe, except for maybe a bear or a deer. So we need some protection. I know for a fact that the Carroll County Code Book has lots of ordinances in it having to do with real estate and properties and things of that sort. It is in your power to require Arcadia, who, as John pointed out, has the money to do this, to put an appropriate fence around that property, because we all know Arcadia is a reality. It's going to be in our neighborhood. There's nothing we can do about that. But you can protect this. That's your responsibility. Also, it's your responsibility to save all the taxpayers' money in providing security for that situation. Or if someone breaks in my house, who am I going to call? I'm going to call the sheriff. Everybody's tax money goes to pay for that. So we need your help. We need you to protect us. We need you to keep us safe. We need you to protect our property and our property values. And the whole county needs for you to save their tax money. So we're asking you very politely, please help us with this. It was dropped in our back doors without our knowledge, without our consent. So we are just grasping at straws now and asking for your help to help keep us living the life that we love right now. So please remember all those factors. It is in your power. You can help keep us safe. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And David Boatman.
Gentlemen, hope y'all are doing all right this evening. Back again, been coming several months now, requesting some things. Got the neighborhood involved at this point. There will be more of us coming, hopefully, each time until we see some type of resolve. We as a community are not against drug rehabilitation. We want people to get help as needed, but we also want to feel safe in our homes. We would love to have jobs in Carroll County, but we would love to have a job creator that is an asset to Carroll County and not something that brings additional crime and a tax burden to the entire county. While the state of Virginia can sell this property to whoever it sees fit, Carroll County Board of Supervisors has the full authority to protect its citizens by passing immediately an ordinance. Y'all can call it tonight, make a motion, make a second, pass it if you believe in protecting your citizens. Any facility like this coming into Carroll County should be required to have a minimum of an 8-foot attractive fence around that facility. This is a billion-dollar company. They have the funds. A minimum of 2 full-time security guards per 100 patients on site would be a good start. No Suboxone or methadone distribution inside of 1,000 feet of a residential neighborhood, school, or church. Or before this thing closes, y'all have the ability to pass an ordinance that says Carroll County will have no drug rehabilitation treatment facility within 1,000 feet of a residential neighborhood, school, or church. Then the state can still sell it to whoever they want. Y'all will have control over what comes in by passing ordinances. That's why you have that authority. We want to know that my neighbors, my family, are safe in our homes. Won't take y'all but just a minute to make a motion and pass it. This company is not Betty Crocker. This company, under my understanding, received a $17 million fine for Medicaid fraud in West Virginia right at 2019, 2020. That's what's coming. While they're trying to keep 911 calls down to that facility, instructing their staff to only call absolutely necessary, they've still hit 98 calls that quick. This one's going to be more. We know y'all can do it. It's my understanding the county found several $1 million in its budget. Buy it. Put in there something good for the county. If the state can sell it to who they want, let them sell it to y'all. Let them sell it to us. Parcel it off. The $4 million, it's $9 million property. We can buy it. Make money on it. Cut the taxes with the extra money. It can be reverted back to the county like the original supervisors that purchased that land and gave it to the state intended for it to be once that facility left. Look into that avenue. Fight for that. That is my 3 minutes. The last meeting y'all had, you allowed letters from citizens. I have just a few letters. It would take me less than 5 minutes to read them to you. One being from the former sheriff of Carroll County, telling y'all what type of problems to expect. Since y'all allowed it at the last meeting with the farmers, will y'all allow me to read these or allow Crystal to read them to you, please?
Absolutely. I have no problem with it.
Would it be me or would it
Yeah.
be Crystal?
It can be you.
First one, I live at 670 Carrollwood Drive in Woodlawn, Virginia. Very concerned about the Galax Drug Rehab Center moving into Carroll County. I would not feel safe unless specific ordinances were met to protect the citizens and us who live nearby. I feel this center would put an excessive demand on the EMS and police in Carroll County. I want to feel safe in my residence, and I don't want a drug rehabilitation center within 1,000 feet of any residential neighborhood, school, or church. This Carroll County Board of Supervisors.
Hey, Mr. Boatman, could you say who they're from?
This one was from the gentleman that lives at 670 Carrollwood Drive.
Okay, there's no name to them.
He did not sign it.
Okay,
I believe his last name was Stevens when I talked to him yesterday when he asked me to carry it up here.
okay.
This one, the rest I believe do have names. Carroll County Board of Supervisors, I am writing in regards to the Life Center, Drug Rehab Center moving to the Southwestern Virginia Training Center location. To those who live outside of Woodlawn neighborhood, this plan may seem ideal. The Woodlawn community is composed of hardworking people who purchased our home securing the foundation of a safe, ideal place to live and raise our families. Many longtime residents who now live on a fixed income or retired. Others are families with young children who have purchased their first home. We care about the individuals needing treatment, but we also care about the safeties of our families. When I was sheriff of Carroll County, my department experienced numerous break-ins from individuals coming from the Galax Life Center. This facility will also affect other communities in Carroll County due to traveling Interstate 77, Highways 52 and 58 from different states. Carroll County Sheriff's Office will experience a very high call volume without the proper security. I highly recommend the Carroll County Board of Supervisors pass an ordinance including the following: a minimum of an attractive 8-foot security fence surrounding the entire property with a security booth at the entrance exit. Minimum of 2 full-time security guards on site 24/7 for every 100 individuals housed at that facility. That there be no Suboxone or methadone administered within 1,000 feet of any residential neighborhood, school, or church. No drug rehabilitation treatment facility to be located in Carroll County within 1,000 feet of any residential neighborhood, school, or church. Thank you for your consideration to this request, Warren and Libby Manning. To whom it may concern, it's been a few times in my life I have ever felt defeated before I've even started the battle for justice. However, this, with God's strength, will plow things through and say that is one reason I have felt that the city is another state and I will not be able to live in a peaceful and safety of my own home. I like to live the Andy Griffith lifestyle in a town, but no one has the belief to find my throne into an environment and care about it. This is a corporation being planted in my backyard without my calling. Yes, all humans deserve another chance. However, there are still prices to pay for the others who will be around them that are innocent. You don't cater to the perpetrated and punish the victims. Why place like this, a situation like this in a neighborhood full of innocents and provide them with no security? I could fill pages with my opinions. However, I will stop here and place this letter in your hands and in God's actions, asking for your help. In shot, a neighbor near Training Center Road, dated June 14th, 2021. Carroll County Supervisors, it has come to my attention as a citizen of Woodlawn that Acadia Health plans to put a drug rehab facility in the previous training center facility. This would be a nightmare that we as citizens would never wake from. A barrage of calls to our 911 system for help with clients that are out of control, drug dealers cruising the area to pick up people who have left to seek drugs. Things would be stolen in the surrounding areas to be pawned. I lived in Galax and heard of the calls on the scanner dispatched to the police. I personally know about all the problems encountered there. We bought our home in Woodlawn for a sanctuary. Let me ask you, would you want it in your backyard? Do some research about Acadia. This company has not kept its word or obligations to the city of Galax. What makes anyone think it will to the citizens of Carroll County? Since we have no control over the state, you as county supervisors have a responsibility to us as the citizens of this neighborhood to ensure a reasonable portion of safety ordinances. 8-foot security fence, security guards per every 100 patients, no Suboxone or methadone treatment within 1,000 feet of a residential neighborhood, or no drug rehabilitation treatment facility located within 1,000 feet of a residential neighborhood, school, or church. They ask that they furnish their own ambulance service with transport personnel and provide a signal light at the Training Center Road intersection if this comes due to the increased traffic. Alicia Stevens, 212 Robinson Drive. I got two more. To whom it may concern, I live within a mile of the training center and agree with the proposal that David Boatman has made to have security measures implemented and not only keep the community safe, but to keep video proof of any illegal activity that may happen. Sincerely, a neighbor. To whom it may concern, I work in a mental health facility and have close to 2 decades. I will be the first to express the importance of drug and mental health rehabilitation. I am not against having these types of services in our area. I understand the allure of purchasing an already large facility that would provide that type of environment needed. However, I strongly feel some security measures need to be considered, specifically due to this facility being in a neighborhood full of families. I agree with the proposal to have security guards 24/7, security footage that can be played back in any attempt to keep the community safe. Signed, neighbor. Carroll County Board of Supervisors. I'm writing this letter with great concern. My concern is for the well-being of our community and the safety of our citizens. My wife and I live at 212 Robinson Drive in Woodlawn. It is just across from the Training Center Road. We as citizens have the right to express our concerns and as fellow Americans, our suggestions. If the Life Center moves here, we need certain safety criteria to be met. It will change our community for the worse. Before they are allowed to open, a fence should be in place. Also, a proven and active security force should be on site. We should not allow the facility to open without these basics in place. Also, there needs to be a traffic light installed at the intersection of Highway 58 and Training Center Road. The Life Center should have their own ambulance service, so it will not tie up EMS being able to serve our fellow citizens. I am a minister, and I also serve as the chaplain for Twin County Hospital. During my time with Twin County, I have watched and seen the damages caused by the lack of security at the current Life Center in Galax. I have heard what Life Center has promised Galax, but sadly nothing but trouble has been brought. We need to understand by looking at the example in Galax. These security measures need to be in place and proven to the people before they open. As for the Sheriff's Department, they will need our prayers and support as never before. The streets and side roads of Hillsville and Woodlawn will be crawling with dealers and pushers to sell the drugs to the patients that are let free to roam. I am asking to please consider the cost of these decisions. Let us be sure these security measures are met and authenticated before they open. If they are not, we will be just like Galax, and we all know that the Life Center goes in with empty promises. I have experienced it firsthand. Regards, Joe Stevens. Would y'all like these letters?
Give them to Crystal, please.
Thank y'all for your time.
Thank you. At this time, I want to go back to the adding of the agenda and get a vote. I want to add the MOU for the fire apparatus to the agenda and the correct consent calendar to add the corrections for the budget appropriations for departmental budget overages in the amount of $41,500.
I make a motion that we amend the agenda.
I got a motion. Do I have a second?
I'd like to amend the motion to include, would you be prepared to do that presentation we discussed earlier about this zoning? If we would change the consent agenda, I mean, or not.
It might take a while to have I haven't sent the PowerPoint to IT and I don't have my pointers. I mean, I could run through it or we could put it on for the next meeting, whatever your preference is.
I just want to go to the next meeting.
Do it for the July.
But I'll,
So I don't need to amend my motion anymore. Okay, you're going to second it and we'll be good.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, I assume you're ready to vote. Mr. Philip McCraw?
Yes.
Mr. Robbie McCraw?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the payments and invoices.
Just a quick question, Tracy.
Yes.
There's some invoices in here that went to some churches. What were those for? Litter pickup? Okay. Just wanted to make sure just had a question. Go ahead, Tracy.
All right. Do I hear a motion to accept the payments and invoices as presented?
I make a motion, we accept the invoices as presented.
Have a motion to have a second?
I'll second it.
Second. Are there any further discussion? All right, hearing none, I'll assume you're ready to vote. Mr. Robbie McCraw?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Philip McCraw?
Yes.
And I vote yes. All right, next on the agenda is the minutes for the May 10th, 2020, Article A and Article B, May 17th, 2020. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from these two meetings?
So move.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Are there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. I'll start with Mr. Hill.
Yes.
Mr. Robbie McCraw?
Yes.
Mr. Philip McCraw?
Yes.
And I vote yes. All right, so we'll move on to new business. The RFC presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Gordon.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It's good to be with you all. My name is Gordon Jones. I'm the partner in charge of the audit. You all should have a copy of my presentation that Crystal just gave to you. But before I get into that, I'd like to talk about the reports that we issue as part of your financial statements. There are 3 of those reports. The first one's the Independent Auditors Report. For 2020, it was a clean and modified report, the highest level of assurance that you can receive. For fiscal year 2020, there were no new pronouncements, so the financial statements weren't changed, mostly because of COVID. We would have had to have adopted GASB 84, which is Governmental Accounting Standards Board number 84, but because of COVID, they pushed it off until the current fiscal year 2021. The second report that we issue as part of your financial statements is the report on internal control and on compliance and other matters. We do report one finding here. It's an internal controller finding. It has to do with adjustments that we made to the financial statements. I'll get more into that in just a little bit if you'll bear with me. I've got a couple things in the presentation that I'll speak about regarding those adjustments. The last report is the Independent Auditor's Report on compliance for each major program and on internal control over compliance required by the Uniform Guidance. This is the report this is a single audit report. It's required by the federal government if you receive more than $750,000 in federal funds or expend more than $750,000 in federal funds. It's a clean, unmodified report as well. Any questions on those three reports? And all of those reports are in your part of your financial statements. I'm going to turn to the presentation. I'm just going to turn to page 2. The county's books are kept on two different bases of accounting, a full accrual basis and a modified accrual. At the top of page 2, you'll find 5 years of data for the county on the full accrual basis. It's a long-term perspective. It includes all of your fixed assets and all of your long-term debt. The point I'd like to emphasize has to do with net position. And again, I'm looking at the 2020 column. For 2019, your unrestricted net position was about $7.5 million. For 2020, it's about $16.7 million. That number more than doubled, largely because of the change in collection of property taxes going to twice-year collections. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we proceed. Down on the bottom, you have the modified accrual, more of a short-term perspective. It doesn't include fixed assets. It doesn't include long-term debt. There, we talk about fund balance when we talk about equity. Total fund balance for the governmental funds is about $18.1 million. Unassigned fund balance is about $17.3 million. 2019, you had about 8.9, so that number almost doubled as well. And again, mostly because of the going to twice-year collections. Net governmental expenditures for the county, including the school board, is about $77.6 million. So your fund balance as a percentage of that is about 23%, and your unassigned is about 22%. Both very safe numbers. We usually recommend between 15 and 20%. So the county changed that by going mostly to twice-year collections. I wouldn't say entirely, but it certainly had a huge impact on it. Over on page 3, you have 5 years of data for the general fund. This is the income statement on a modified accrual basis. Shows 5 years of data. 2020 column all the way to the right are the numbers I'll be emphasizing. Total revenues for 2020 was about $50.7 million. That's up about $7 million from the previous year, mostly due to going to twice-year collections. You can see your general property taxes, that first number, at about $29 million, up from $21.4 million the previous year. And again, due to going to twice-year collections. Expenditures are below that. Total expenditures of about $42.3 million, basically flat over that 5-year period, increasing at 0.03%. So over that 5-year period, basically expenditures for the general fund have not increased. I will point out the one category that has increased has been health and welfare, increasing at about 10.4%. I think we talked a little bit about that last year. A lot of that's due to increase in Children Services Act, CSA. So change in fund balance was an increase of about $8.4 million, started with 9.6, ending with about 18.1 million. Cash balance at about $13.8 million. Both very safe numbers, and again, the increase is due to going to twice-year collections. Any questions about that? You might ask, well, why is the fund balance so much higher than the cash balance? And that's because under modified accrual, we go out 60 days and pull revenues back into the current fiscal year. So you have receivables, particularly property taxes, property tax receivable. A large number was pulled back into fiscal year 2020. So that's why fund balance is higher than cash balance there. And again, we do the same calculation below that, calculating your reserve percentages as a percentage of operating expenditures. Fund balance as a percentage of operating expenditures, including the schools, about 23%. Cash balance at about 18%. And again, that's just due to timing. Any questions about those numbers? Over on page 4, just some graphs of that information coming from the previous page, page 3, comparing 2016 to 2020. You can see what going to twice-year collections, what impact it had on property taxes, that blue pie piece there. 2016, it was about 51%. For 20, it was about 57%. Over on the next page, revenues for the 5 fiscal years in a bar chart. Down below, you have the major revenues. If I put all these on the same graph, the ones at the top would be really tiny, and you really couldn't tell anything about them. So I put the higher dollar amounts on the major revenues graph below, and you can see general property tax, that gray number, how it spiked there. Next year, we should see that level off and come back down to where 2019 number was. So that's just a one-time increase that helped fund balance. Same type of information, expenditures in the form of a public pie chart. 2016 compared to 2020. The blue, the bright blue is health and welfare. I spoke about that on the general fund summary. It's 14% of your expenditures in 2016. It's 21% in the current year, 2020. Education decreased from 29% to 26%. Not because you are funding it less, but because their revenues fluctuate between state and federal funds. So the amount the county has to give them fluctuates significantly. I don't know that if the amount that you all have given to the school is decreased or not. That's on a modified accrual basis. And then over on page 7, bar chart for expenditures, showing that education is the main priority of the county, followed by public safety, that third from the left column. And then health and welfare, again, there in the very center, you can see it was about $6 million in 2016. It's up to about $9 million in 2020. Over on page 8, you can see a graph of total revenues compared to total expenditures. You can see how revenues spiked, the blue line there, again, due to property taxes. Any questions about that before I move on? On page 9, summary of the county's debt for 2020, total long-term obligations, and this includes interest-bearing debt as well as other types of obligations like net pension liability, other post-employment benefit liabilities, compensated absences. All those are estimates. There's no interest related to that. Those are numbers that are calculated by actuaries, and they give us those numbers through the VRS, and we add those, or you all add those numbers to your financial statements. Couple things I'll point out. Literary loans, that little over $1 million number there, 1.04 million. We paid off in 2 years. Next fiscal year, 22, those are gone. The third number there, that VPSA general obligations bonds of $3.5 million will be paid off by 2023. So those are just a couple things that will happen in a short period that will be positive for the county. School board obligations, these are all estimated numbers. They don't have any interest-bearing debt. We show all that in the general fund because the school board can't have interest-bearing debt, generally speaking. So total school board obligations, $44.6 million. Most of that is made up of a net pension liability of $33.6 million. Not that that's their fault. They pay what the Virginia retirement system tells them to pay. It's just a calculation provided by VRS through their actuary. And again, because of governmental accounting standard pronouncements, we have to add those numbers to the financial statements. Population, 29,137. And that's numbers provided by the APA's comparative costs, in case you're wondering where I get that number from. Debt per capita about 26.19 compared to the state average of about 58.14 for 2019. 2020 number might be available. Probably should have looked for that before I left, but I didn't. Total general debt reached $4.4 million for 2020. It's about 10% of the budget. We typically recommend about 5%. The next page, page 10, is our communication to you all, those charged with governance. It's a clean letter. It does talk about the adjustments that we made to your financial statements. That's the only negative aspect of this letter. And then behind that, over on page 13, you've got the adjustments that caused the finding on your internal control report I mentioned previously. And you know, these adjustments are just accrual adjustments. I think probably what caused that more than anything was not having a finance director on staff at the time. You had a consultant that helped prepare this information, and it's hard for somebody that doesn't work for the county to be able to come in and pick up all these adjustments because they're just not familiar with the day-to-day operations of the county. Luckily, you all have a really good person on the staff now, and I suspect this won't be a problem 2021.
You won't have any ownership of that, do you?
Sir?
You won't have any ownership of that, do you?
No, sir. Any questions about those adjustments? The standard that came along was a few years back. I don't remember exactly when it was. It's probably been 7 or 8 years ago that came along as an auditing standard that said that financial statements can't be adjusted by the auditors and remain independent. Because of that, if we have adjustments, we're required to report it to the appropriate people. They want the financial statements to be your financial statements, not the auditor's financial statements. Over on page 17, we had a few management comments. Management comments are items that we don't feel rise to the level where they have to be reported in the financial statements. We had 3, which wasn't bad. My favorite has to do with conflict of interest disclosure forms. 1 EDA board member, 2 PSA board members, and the Planning Commission didn't file their form. Social services budget, the CSA had expenditures. What appeared to us like they had expenditures in excess appropriations. This isn't uncommon. The social services or the CSA program will get additional money from the state, and they don't feel like it, it doesn't require local money, so then they just spend the money without having an appropriation, but they are required, even if there isn't any local match, to have you all appropriate it. And then lastly, CSA, we had a few problems with testing vendors specifically related to cases. Any questions about those comments? Okay, lastly, and that's the last thing I'll talk about. As I mentioned earlier, because of COVID-19, they pushed off adoption of GASB 84. It has to do with fiduciary funds. That one will be adopted in fiscal year 21, so by the end of this month. Doesn't have a huge impact on the county, although it does have a pretty significant impact on the schools. Because of this, schools will have to pull in the school activity funds they keep at the schools and show those as a special revenue fund. It's a little bit more work for the schools. I'm sure it's on Justin's radar. I don't think it's going to have it won't have too much of an impact on the county's books. GASB statement number 87 was supposed to be adopted in 21, but they pushed it off to 22. Has to do with leases, and it will not be fun. Luckily, we've got another year to prepare for that. My only suggestion there is to start early. It basically will require the county to account for operating leases differently than we have in the past. In the past, we just had note disclosure saying you're going to have this operating lease for the next 10 years, and this is what you're going to pay. Now you're going to have to book an asset, which is it's a what's that? What's that? Yeah, right to use. It's a, it's not it's not a physical asset. It's, anyway, you have to book an asset and offset that with the liability of paying the lease. So if you have a significant number of leases, that will be messy next year, 2022. I'll stop there. If you have any questions, I'll happy to answer them. Try to. Anyway.
I have a question about I'm assuming that you've looked at other people's expenditures bring in taxes twice a year.
Uh-huh.
Have you got, since this was our first year last year doing that, do you see a drop back the second year? Right now our fund balance is way high, but does it even out over a couple of years, 3 years, or how does that normally work?
Not unless you spend more. That one time hit of going to twice year collection is a bump of 7 or 8 million that helps you with a low fund balance, low cash balance. Also, it helps you a lot with cash flow throughout the year, not running out of cash till you get to the next payment. But unless you spend that 7 or 8 million, you're going to stay at that level. Now next year, your revenues will be back down to a level similar to 2019, and your fund balance won't increase 7 or 8 million like it did this year. But unless you spend that 7 or 8 million that you got that one-time bump, it should stay at that level. Does that answer? Yeah. Okay. It's a one-time benefit. Can't go in the opposite direction.
This county's had trouble spending that in the past.
Does anybody have anything else? Guess not. Thank you, Gordon.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Next, under new business, from the Virginia Cooperative Extension, Steve. And his assistant.
That's my colleague.
There you go.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for listening to us this evening. Of course, this is Ashley Edwards, our area horticulture agent serving Grayson County. So thank you for listening to us this evening. Of course, I'm the agriculture and natural resource agent for Carroll County. A lot of you probably already know this, but on April 2nd and 3rd, Easter weekend, we had a really, really hard freeze. And then again, that basically wiped out all the blooms on the fruit trees down in Cana, and well, across the county. And then again, on April 26th, we had another really hard freeze that took away any surviving blooms. So there's not any fruit for Cana, basically. So what's going on is the FSA has an emergency, FSA meaning the Farm Service Agency, has a county emergency board, and that's represented by the Natural Resource Conservation Service, New River Soil and Water Board, Farm Service Agency, and Cooperative Extension. And Ashley and I represent those. And basically what we'd like to ask the Board of Supervisors here in Carroll County is to declare a natural disaster due to this freeze, and that occurred in April. And what that does, that's the first step for a secretarial declaration of disaster, and that means we're talking about the Secretary of Agriculture. So in order to do this, this is the first step. Just a little bit about the fruit in Carroll County. It's about 2 point sales of fruit in the last several years, according to the National Ag Statistics Service, is about 2.1 million. There's about 497 acres of orchards in Carroll County. So, like I say, we are asking for the Board of Supervisors to declare a natural disaster. And Ashley's going to talk a little bit more.
Yeah, I would kind of explain what that would entail from you all. Basically, we would just need you all to put together a letter that gets sent to the Secretary of Agriculture for Virginia. What this letter does is says that based on what we have explained to you and what we all observe, sorry, I'm short. Based on your observations and our conversations, that you are declaring the county as a natural disaster area. They get that letter, they then go back and forth with the Farm Service Agency, and that's really all it would entail from the board. So this process it can be really important for our producers locally. As Steve mentioned, these loans are low interest. They are loans, so they are intended to be paid back, but they are just an opportunity for the growers to have some money to get through this next season, where some of them have limited income and some of them have lost everything. So when we met, we determined that we have a 95 to a 100% fruit loss. So depending on the elevation of their orchard, what crops it was, cherries, we're looking at 99 to 100% loss. Apples and peaches, those are the other two with the highest acreage numbers. They're at least 95, upwards to some reaching 100, just depending on the elevation, variety, what time the blooms were out, that sort of thing. So what's important about these loans, some growers might need that and they might jump on that for this year. Others might not, since it is a loan and has to be repaid. It's still important that we go through this process because if the county is declared a natural disaster area, that can act as a way to make us eligible for future programs that may come along down the line. So Farm Service Agency in a couple years might decide they want to put out some free money essentially to these growers, and they might use only the counties who have had natural disaster declarations as their eligibility criteria. So,
And just to say that we're asking just for a disaster on the fruit, because that was a crop that we really hurt. So when we talk about natural disaster, we're talking about fruit.
well, yeah, and the timing of the freezes, of course, was in April. The crops that were out then and blooming were our tree fruit. So I have put together, and Steve and I have put together a letter that has all of this written out, so you don't have to try to remember. And it also has the address for the Secretary of Agriculture and where the letter needs to be sent. And of course, if you have any questions, you feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to help. But basically, that's our request. Have I forgotten anything?
The only other thing is if Carroll's declared a natural disaster area and it comes back in a year or so that there are funds, that would help the surrounding counties too. If Carroll is considered a disaster area, that would help Patrick County, which there's a lot of orchards in the area. Of course, Surrey County, North Carolina, breaks into Richmond.
Yeah, all of the contiguous counties.
Anyone have any questions?
Did we have the same thing last year? I mean, we had freezes late last year
But it wasn't near this.
Not to this extent, yeah.
below the mountain.
The producers are saying this is the worst since what, the 1950s?
Like a long time. This is, well, see, you can have losses at certain percentages every year. This is the only one that we've had in a long time that we would declare an actual total loss, where you're looking at no harvest. Anybody that has anything, a lot of my growers have told me that it's not even enough to justify spraying and paying for the chemicals to upkeep it. So this is pretty bad.
Do you need a motion from the board or to proceed with this? How do we need to handle it, Steve? Mike?
I'm thinking you need a motion or direction to staff to prepare that letter for adoption at the next meeting.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we move on this request and declare it a fruit natural disaster. Is that what you're asking?
Your letter, I think, just has to declare the county as a natural disaster area. But in the letter, you explain the reasoning behind that. So.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I got a motion and a second. I'll start the voting with Mr. Philip McCrone,
Yes.
Mr. Robin McCrone,
Yes.
Mr. Rick,
Yes.
and I vote yes.
Are there any particular code sections or statutes that you'd like us to reference? Anything in particular?
I don't
I don't think so.
We've worked with Lindsay Carrico, who's the FSA Executive Director for Carroll County, Galax, and Grayson County, and she did not mention it. And she would be one that you, if you have questions, contact us or contact them.
If you wanted to like draft a letter maybe and then run it by us and her, whoever, to say, does this work? We'd be happy to do that too.
And Ashley has a really nice letter with a lot of information on it that we'll do with Crystal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Producers would really appreciate that.
Next under new business is the redistricting waiver. Is this something that needs read, or?
No, what I would need is a motion and an approval for us to allow for us to proceed with split districts due to the inability to get the census information. We're not able to do our redistricting right now, so they offer a waiver so that when it comes to time of election, you don't have small district areas. What I would request is under provision of 24.2307, Carroll County has the following split districts in need of a waiver, and that would be Hillsville B, town boundary, Hillsville C, town boundary, Woodlawn D, town boundary, and Woodlawn E, town boundary.
Do I have a motion to have a waiver for these boundaries and provisions of 24.2-307?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion. Second. Are there any discussion?
Yeah, that's Woodlawn D and B, did you say? What is that?
I think it says D.
Oh, eliminating?
Woodlawn D and E.
D and E.
D and E.
What I believe what happens, and I might know enough to be dangerous, but when you're supposed to follow the Senate District, House, and the electorate districts. Well,
We don't.
with this information, if those are changing, it's going to leave small areas outside. So we're going to, I believe this is what this allows us to follow the existing districts we have until we go through the redistricting process. And that will not start until September or so. Depends on September, October, unfortunately. So I don't know if it can be done by the time of the next election.
Are there any other discussion? All right, I'll start the voting with Mr. Robbie McCraw,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Philip McCraw,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay. Next, the CSA request.
In your packet, you have a request from the CSA. Usually this is done every year. It's to appropriate additional funds for the CSA program that is supported by partially by funds of Carroll County. Looking for my form here, but this is something that is not really controlled by us. It's one of these programs that provide assistance to children in need. I'm gonna put it that way. So I'd request that you approve this appropriation as we move forward.
Do I have a motion to approve the CSA request?
How much is it, Steve? Mike?
I'm looking for that number right in front of me.
I
I
can
can't
read
get it
it. I
to
have
pull
it
up.
right
That's the
here.
reason
I couldn't get it to pull up either. And I done mixed all my papers up, so.
All right, it says, it's from the CSA. It says, dear members of the board, as chairman of the local community policy and management team, I must request a supplement allocation from the Office of Comprehensive Services for at-risk youth. CSA, this project expenditures for CSA exceed the present allocation for Carroll County. My estimates indicate a total of $3,471,988.82 in expenditures for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021. Based on these estimates, the original local CSA budget of $3,005,395 will be exceeded by $466,593.82. The required additional local match amount at 34.4% will be $160,508.27. Thank you for this consideration to this request, Teresa Isom.
This additional $160,508.27 in funds from the county itself.
Do I have a motion to request this?
Make a motion that we honor the request for the CSA.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I don't think we have a choice.
We don't have a choice.
I just didn't want to say that.
But I do not like this each and every year that we run into the same situation. $500,000, well, 34% of 466,000, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, we'll hold that until next meeting.
I don't think you can.
No,
And just to let you know, you're probably going to have a similar request next year because it was at one time was going to be put into the budget, and however it was pulled out for. Because I'd rather have the request than to have it there.
I'll second it.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. I'll start the vote with Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Philip McCraw,
Yes.
Mr. Robbie McCraw,
yes.
and I vote yes. Under new business, the consent calendar. Ask for a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented with the correction from the amended agenda.
Make a motion that we approve the consent calendar.
Have a motion to approve the consent calendar. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll start the voting with Mr. Robbie McCraw,
Yes.
Mr. Philip McCraw,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
and I vote yes. That takes us down to the first quarter appropriations. Ask for a motion to approve the first quarter appropriation.
I'll make a motion to approve the first quarter appropriations.
Have a motion to approve the first quarter appropriations. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll start the vote with Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Robbie McCraw,
Yes.
Mr. Philip McCraw,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Under new business, the Section G, the fire truck allotment. I have this, I can read it.
I
You
can
got it?
I can give you a little brief update on
Okay.
this. What this is for is a replacement fire apparatus for Hillsville Volunteer Fire Department. There was a truck that was damaged, I think a couple years ago, and the insurance money was kept in savings. And in order to replace the vehicle, it took an additional $300,000. For these funds, the department has asked for the county to provide the $300,000 for this additional vehicle, which will be deducted from their annual ATL funds of $30,000 a year. And what this will allow them to do is to purchase this truck through funds that we receive from the state and distribute to different fire departments. So it's a benefit. We'll have the opportunity to do a no-interest loan, and the guarantee on it is we'll be taking the funds back additionally over a 10-year period. So I would recommend going ahead and allowing for the allocation for this so we can purchase the vehicle.
And that, do we have a motion to approve the fire truck allotment?
I make a motion that we approve the fire truck allotment.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Are there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll start the vote with Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Philip McCraw,
Yes.
Mr. Robbie McCraw,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Next under new business, PSA support agreement resolution.
In your packet, you have an agreement. It's a support agreement supporting the refinancing of loans through the PSA. This will allow the board to have support for the refunding of bond issues of the Carroll County PSA.
Just as a side note, this has helped reduce the debt of the PSA.
About $30,000 a year. And it did not extend the term of any of the loans, so it saved off interest.
And that, do I have a motion to approve the PSA support agreement resolution?
So move.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second it.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any discussion? And I'll start the voting with Mr. Robbie McCraw,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Philip McCraw,
Yes.
and I vote yes. And moving on the agenda under new business, the treasurer's request. Mr. Watson, you speak on that?
Yes, absolutely. We received a request from the treasurer for Carroll County over the for some time. The treasurer's office can issue DMV stops, and what that allows is an avenue to collect personal property. So in the process, what they do is they report the personal property to the DMV, and the DMV restricts the issuance of tags. So in that process, what the DMV charges a fee of $25 per vehicle, and they receive. Then also, the person is charged a $30 administrative fee, which is allowed by the Virginia Code. The request we received from the treasurer has asked to use those additional funds from the collection, the $30 per stop that they receive once they collect, to go toward their department to help offset cost and help with salaries. And the actual request for use of the office to use for equipment, salary increases due to additional workload.
Hearing the treasurer's request, do I have a motion to accept this request?
I so move.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any discussion?
Way I understood it, that money is coming back. We're still getting the taxes.
Absolutely.
Right. And
Yes,
so,
the money that you receive off that, and we can follow up to see what the value is. I'm guessing, just off the top of my head, about 11,000. Does that sound about right?
Yep.
That's the administrative fee on that side. So it might be something that if this is going to be on an annual basis based on that fee changing, it might be an additional appropriation at a later time. So if this is approved, we'll come back and ask for a appropriation in order to include this in her budget.
way I understood it, it was just to cover the cost of extra time it takes them to do the paperwork and all.
That's correct.
And so, yes.
All right, having a motion and a second, I'll start the voting with Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Robbie McCrone,
Yes.
Mr. Philip McCrone.
Yes.
And I vote yes. So under new business, okay, the MOU for the fire apparatus.
Okay, with the recent purchase of the fire truck for Hillsville Volunteer Fire Department, what we have started in the last several months is requiring organizations that receive funding from the county and fire and EMS that we have started working toward having MOUs, memorandums of understanding, so that as the vehicle is purchased, it tells how it's purchased and if disposed of, how those funds are used. A lot of times when you have a vehicle that's disposed of, you have to end up tracking down how it was purchased, with whose funds it was purchased, where the funds go. This is a way to clean it up so that there's an understanding, so later on down the road, these items can be addressed easily. So I'd recommend approving this MOU, and I will have the chief of Hillsville sign it also.
Does it require a vote?
I would request that a vote would be to
Approve this?
Yes.
This MOU that we have here, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve this?
So move.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
A second.
Have a motion and a second, are there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll start the voting with Mr. Philip McCrone,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Robbie McCrone,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So that takes us down to old business, the 6-year road plan. Has everybody had an opportunity to look at what VDOT had sent to put in that? Do I have a motion to approve that?
I make a motion, we approve the 6-year road plan as presented.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Have a motion, second, are there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll start the voting with Mr. Rex Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Philip McCrone,
Yes.
Mr. Robbie McCrone,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right, that takes us down to board member comments. I'll start with Mr. Philip McCrone.
Last meeting, we had a question asked. What do we need money for? Tonight, we paid invoices. You look at the debt the county has, we have payments coming up on them. And I guess I was shocked that the question was asked, that the bills have to be paid. County jail, regional jail, CSA, all these bills come in. And they're never smaller than we expect. They're always a little bigger. So we do need money. And we look for ways to try to pay the bills. And sometimes it's hard to find the money. But thanks to the staff here, Mr. Watson, all the crew, we have come up with ways to pay it. And sometimes it's not popular, but it has to be done. And that makes our job kind of hard. And we got some in the county that kind of send out little notes, encourage them to come in, give us a hard time, and they'll actually put their phone number on it. Instead of putting mine or the other supervisors on there, they'll put theirs on there for them to call them. They hadn't seen the budget. I asked one of them today that sent out this card. I asked him this morning, I said, how much is the county debt? I don't know. I said, how much is the debt for the outfit you work for? Oh, they don't have one. I said, and that's exactly right. When they have an increase in something, they just bill it to me on my insurance dues, and I pay it. So we all need to work together. We have things that is not popular to do, but we have to meet our obligations for the county. And as of January, my term will be ending, but please work with these other guys and don't give them a hard time. Work with them and try to pay the bills, try to make it as easy on the taxpayers as they can. And I have a heart for people. I don't want to take money off of somebody that is not necessary. I want everybody to pay their part, but I don't want anybody to have to be paying other people's parts. And it bothers me whenever I see some of the numbers, hear some of the comments people make when I'm out in the community. It sometimes it wakes me up during the night. But and I'll probably after January, I'll probably still have them nightmares. This is not an easy job. If you think you got the answers, there were 3 seats vacant this time, and I noticed there wasn't a whole lot come out to join in. If you got the answer, come on out, get on the ballot, and run, and do the county a good job. We need them. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Philip. Mr. Robbie McCraw?
I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight and for all the comments that have been made. And I think we need to try to come to some kind of agreement with this issue at the training center, but I know that we still have lots of things that's going to have to be addressed before we can come to that. It's not a simple process, and hopefully at our next meeting, Mr. Durbin can enlighten us on the process. So, I don't know of anything else that I have right off. I appreciate everybody, and thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hill?
Yes, I'd like to ask the staff to develop a policy for debt service as a percentage of operating and debt service expenditures. I think I mentioned that earlier. If we can work on that, maybe get something back to us by October, maybe. Does that give you plenty of time to do that?
Absolutely, and I think that we can develop a policy. I'll probably lean on our budget committee also to meet with us to help develop a strong plan. As we said before, as the auditor was here, it said that this is a one-time opportunity. Going to twice a year tax collection allowed us to increase cash flow. So it would, one of the issues that you saw in the past is when it come later times in the year that you didn't have the cash flow in order to pay the bills. So it was a really great decision to move forward with that. I think that we need to determine what that number is in order so that we never get into the issue where you have to wait to mail checks. So, yes, absolutely. We'll all work together and develop a policy that we can adopt and move forward with. So,
Yeah, I'd hope to never see what I saw in the newspaper back in 2006
yep.
or 7, where it said county debt reaches $60 million. Well, it continued to rise to $100 million several years after that. We are still facing all this from back years ago. But anyway, I think we've finally got crossed over and heading in the right direction.
Digging out.
The other thing, I'm gonna make a motion. The rest of the board members may not approve, but that's fine. I'm gonna make a motion that we direct the planning commission to address a zoning ordinance to cover facilities and safety issues for those facilities like the one planned at the training center and any other facilities within the I-77 and 58 corridor, northwest area within 100 days.
Have a motion. Do I have a second?
You have a second.
I have a motion and a second. I'll start. Any discussion? I'll start the vote with Mr. Hill.
Yes.
Mr. Robbie McCraw.
Yes.
Mr. Philip McCraw.
Yes.
And I vote yes.
Sorry, Ronald. this may, it gives us an opportunity to do something. We can't dictate who goes in there, what the state sells the property to, but it may give us some options that we don't have right now. We have no options or anything we can do at this point in time. The other thing that do we need a motion on the memorandum with the school buses, or you will address that during your?
Well, we need to make a motion to appropriate the $520,000 for the buses.
I'm gonna make that motion that we work a memorandum to cover that we recoup those funds.
Over a designated time, and I'll
Yes.
bring that amount
Yep.
back to you, that time period out.
All right, have a motion. Do I have a second?
A second.
Have a motion, a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll start the vote with Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Robbie McCraw,
Yes.
Mr. Philip McCraw, and I vote yes.
I'm gonna continue just.
Floor is yours, my friend.
I'm glad that the folks over near the training center come in. I wish something could happen earlier, several years ago. The county was able to, the Code of Virginia allowed us to have a couple of years to try to find stuff there. That never came to fruition. And we can't dictate to the state. It's their property, they sell it how they want to. We did pay for that land. The Board of Supervisors paid, I think, $197,000 to buy that land and gave it to the state for that training facility. We asked that to be returned. It never was. So that's kind of where it is now. Usually properties like that stay on the market for 10, 12, 14 years. There's properties in Pulaski that's 10 years ago that were supposed to be sold and have not been sold yet. And why this happened, I don't know. There probably will be a meeting with we'll probably do this over at the Senior Citizens Building. We'll have a meeting. We'll ask those folks to come in and address concerns for the community there, at least to have an opportunity. We'll have a back and forth on that. I want to thank everybody for coming in. That's all I got to say.
Mm-hmm. And I'll ditto what everybody said tonight, and I want to thank all the office staff and employees, and thank all the citizens that come out and spoke tonight. And I do want to recognize the Dixie softball and baseball and t-ball and coach pitch have started back up a direct department, and there's been a lot of great businesses that have helped with the get the program up and going, and a lot of the county office staff and other board members and stuff have worked some of the concessions and hot dogs and different things over there so the kids can get back on the ball field, and I think it's been very successful. I think June 26th there'll be 4 teams they'll be voted on to All-Stars to go to the state tournament and hopefully represent Carroll County with pride. But I want to recognize all the people that donated and helped a little bit and sponsored the season for the kids, and Mohawk, Country Formals, Hills Mowing, Central States, and I don't know that could possibly be Southern States, so if one of the two is going to get a plug. Payne Construction, Contenders, Pizzeria and Arcade, Intermodule Logistics, Salon 222, McDonald's, A1 Paving, Sheets, Virginia 500 Produce Market, Mason Jar, Mays Electrical, Justin Stamper Plumbing and Electric, CW Graydon and Holland, Omega Office Supply, Burris Lawn Care, Going to the Dogs Pet Resort, Brothers in Arms, Empire Designs, Red Hill General Store, Farm Bureau, Lester's Towing, Blue Ridge Paving and Patching, Empire Vacuums, and the Cana Booster Club. I think half the games probably been played in Cana down there to help, with the concessions, and they should be commended. It's with the issues of COVID and all these businesses, it was a blessing to see all these people step up and help our youth, and it's our future. And thank the board and everybody for what they've done, and I'll turn it over to the county administrator.
Just a couple more things to hit. great job. And, Larry Collins was out there, he's on the board, the recreation board, he's out there every day. Dragging the field and marking the field and doing things. And also be able to look at the kids who got to play, they didn't get to play last year, the smiles on their faces and the fun that they're having.
Yeah, it was so important.
Coaches.
I was able to be there a couple of weeks ago on a Saturday when we had our opening day for T-ball and coach pitch, and there was a lot of kids and parents that were really happy to be back at the ball field. So, and you know, as I watched a lot of them go by, I seen all these sponsors on their shirts and all, and I asked Kim at the rec to get me a list because, you know, that's yeoman, because, you know, a lot of these places have suffered with business through the COVID and stuff. So
I think it's important that we remember these are local businesses and that
Absolutely.
we need to support them as much as they have supported our community.
Absolutely. I'll turn it back over to you again.
All right. First item I have is just to let you know that in the upcoming month or two, we're going to be scheduling a regional workshop for the 911. The workshop will be discussing some of the issues with the overall communication and not just our county, but in the area. So we will be scheduling something for the Board of Supervisors and other communities that in order to look at the needs for the long-term needs of communication in Carroll County. Other than that, I have one other item, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Durbin to address.
Thanks, Mike. Gentlemen, as you recall from the last meeting, there were a number of speakers addressed the board about the Virginia Department of Education's recently adopted transgender policies with regard to the schools. Recognizing that the Board of Supervisors doesn't dictate school policy and that this is a statute and policy promulgated from Richmond, the board nonetheless would like to express its views on the matter and give the legislators and administration in Richmond a sense of the community's stance on those policies and in the process for which the transgender policies were adopted. And I think the perception is that it was a bit of a hurried process. So I have prepared a resolution that takes into account some of the arguments that we've heard in other parts of the Commonwealth, issues that have been raised here in Carroll County as well, and as stated in a pending litigation that's been filed against the Department of Education concerning the implementation and adoption of those policies. And if the board would give me latitude, I will just recite the terms of the resolution and then let you decide whether to make a motion to adopt.
Okay.
This is a proposed resolution of Carroll County Board of Supervisors regarding Virginia Department of Education model policies for the treatment of transgender students in Virginia's public schools. Whereas the Carroll County Board of Supervisors is aware of the recently adopted Virginia Code Section 22.1-23.3, which requires the Virginia Department of Education to develop certain model school board policies concerning the treatment of transgender students in public elementary and secondary schools, including access to school facilities and participation in school activities by transgender students. For the purpose of this resolution, the model policies. And whereas the aforesaid statute requires local boards, including the Carroll County School Board, to adopt local policies that are consistent with the model policies developed by VDOE. And whereas the board has reviewed the VDOE model policies and is concerned with both the substance of the policies and the process used in developing such policies. And whereas it is well established that the United States Constitution protects a parent's rights to make decisions concerning the care, custody, and control of their children, including the rights to make decisions concerning the upbringing, education, and care of the child. And such rights have been recognized as fundamental rights protected by the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. And whereas the VDOE model policies do not appear to adequately protect the fundamental constitutional rights of parents concerning the education of children, in that the policies appear to provide for the withholding of certain information concerning a student's transgender status from the parents or custodians. And whereas the VDOE model policies do not adequately protect school students or staff who have religious reservations concerning the implementation of the policies, and whereas the VDOE model policies appear to have been adopted in a hurried manner that did not adequately account for the public input and concerns raised from the public regarding the implementation of the VDOE model policies. And whereas the VDOE model policies are particularly problematic with regard to the use of certain school facilities, including school restrooms, school locker rooms, and showering facilities for the following reasons. Number one, the model policies do not appear to adequately protect the privacy rights of non-transgender students who may be uncomfortable in using these facilities in the presence of students of differing biological sex. Number two, the model policies fail to adequately respect the First Amendment rights of non-transgender students under the Free Exercise Clause, for whom changing clothes or using the bathroom in the presence of students of a differing biological sex would violate the tenets of their religions, a group which is likely to include, among others, many Jewish, Muslim, and Christian students adhering to the teachings of their respective religions. Number three, the model policies, by prohibiting even the most basic inquiry into a student's gender identity before using a restroom, could prevent a school from punishing acts of misconduct in a restroom and do not adequately consider legitimate safety concerns for students. Number four, to the extent that the model policies would permit or require the availability of students of alternative restroom or changing facilities, no funding has been identified by the VDOE or other state entity which would be available to the county to modify current school facilities, and instead constitutes an unfunded mandate for which will burden the taxpayers of Carroll County. And whereas the model policies do not appear to provide adequate protection for the First Amendment rights of students and school staff, because they compel that students be addressed by their preferred gender pronouns, when such compelled speech may violate the religious beliefs of the student or staff members. And whereas the model policies are internally inconsistent in that they provide that gender identity is a matter of subjective self-identification, which school staff have no way of knowing unless the individual communicates their gender identity to school staff. But the policies also appear to prohibit school staff from questioning a student as to their gender identity, and at the same time prohibit school staff from communicating a student's gender identity to others. Thus, the policies appear to create a catch-22 situation where the very questions that would enable compliance with the policy are questions that the school staff are forbidden to ask. And whereas the board is concerned that the model policies concerning dress codes were not adequately considered and could have unintended consequences, especially in the context of physical education classes. And whereas the board is aware of current litigation filed against VDOE and is of the opinion that the model policies should be suspended pending the outcome of the litigation. And whereas the board is committed to the safety and well-being of all students and strongly opposes bullying, harassment, or mistreatment of any student, but observes that such conduct is already prohibited by existing law and policy. And whereas the Carroll County Board of Supervisors wishes to express its support for the First Amendment rights of all students and school staff, and further to express its opposition to the VDOE policies as currently formulated. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Supervisors of Carroll County, Virginia as follows. Number one, that the Board of Supervisors hereby expresses its opposition to the VDOE model policies for the treatment of transgender students in Virginia's public schools as currently formulated for the reasons stated herein. Number two, that the Board of Supervisors hereby encourages the VDOE and the Virginia General Assembly to suspend the implementation of VDOE's model policy pending the outcome of the current litigation filed with regard thereto. Number three, that the Board of Supervisors hereby encourages the VDOE and the Virginia General Assembly to reconsider the VDOE policies for the treatment of transgender students and suspend their application pending such reconsideration. Number four, that the Board of Supervisors expresses its support for the First Amendment rights of its citizens, including the right to free exercise of religion and the rights of parents to direct the upbringing and education of their children. Adopted this the 14th day of June 2021 by the Board of Supervisors in the County of Carroll, Virginia. And gentlemen, that would be the resolution. As I mentioned earlier, this is non-binding. It does not have the effect of law, but it is an expression of the sense of the community and of the board.
Motion to approve resolution.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I have a second, but I'd like to add something to it.
Okay.
I make a motion, we approve the resolution and forward it to our state legislatures.
Do you want to rescind your motion? to that
I'll
motion?
second it.
Okay. Have a motion and a second. Are there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll start the voting with Mr. Philip McCraw,
Yes.
Mr. Robbie McCraw,
Yes.
Mr. Hill.
Yes.
And I vote yes. So,
I'm good.
so you're, you need to make an appropriation for tourism?
No,
Motion?
no, I
Okay.
think we can,
Okay.
oh, yes, I understand if the board is willing.
Okay.
I had just sent it, but
Okay,
I don't think I need to make that motion. I'll wait for
Okay.
a response.
okay. Well, with that, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So move.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right.